Welcome back, folks. We got another episode on the way here. We're underway now with the weekend's long anticipated conclusion to the trilogy. Hurry up tomorrow. It's out now. We're stoked to get this one underway, and we've got our our ace in the hole.
Yep.
The knowledgeable, the wise Asher Swiss is back with us to talk all things weekend here today. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Of course, man. Always a good time. Excited.
Cool. Well, let's skip all the festivities and stuff and get right down into this. Just to preface a little bit as far as where we're coming from with respect to kind of our prior feelings on the weekend before listening to this project. I've always been a big fan of his. I would say personally my favorite album and style from him is kind of that Starboy era stuff with the a little bit of electronic and trap kind of blends that he was doing. Especially working with Daft Punk, I thought was really cool. But I have really enjoyed the previous two installments in this newer trilogy with After Hours and Dawn FM. I really like that 80s pop sound from him as well. So definitely a big fan. But Asher, if I remember correctly, you're an even bigger fan than I am when it comes to the weekend.
Yeah, no, it's been a long ride. I would say I officially like dove in as hard as I did when, that Starboy era was around.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, I would have been like, geez, like seventh grade, like junior high, like late elementary, junior high.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, just like incredible vocals, great songwriting, super cool collabs and features with some of my favorite artists. Really cool, just like a character structure on each of like the projects that really impressed me. And so yeah, no, for a long time now, I've kind of just said that like end all be all, he's my favorite artist that just
Right.
ever. Um, kind of a little bit on the same wavelength with you. I like the Starboy stuff. I've obviously gone back. I quite enjoy his older stuff when he was first like popping up on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny. I was in St. George last night and I was just like cruising around at Barnes and Noble. I found a Thursday vinyl and I,
No,
I thought about
no
I thought
way.
about picking it up. I didn't,
Yeah,
but I thought about it.
crazy.
Um, no, but it's funny being around for a while. I think like what most impressed me. I'm a sucker for the synths. I'm a sucker for like the Mike Dean style production
Yeah.
and that kind of 80s sound that you were referencing a minute ago. I very impressed with the last couple albums we've received in this trilogy, especially After Hours. Don FM great too, but all around like he doesn't really have a miss in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. One of the more solid discographies, top to bottom. I'll agree with you on that one. J Mac's on a little different wavelength. It's with your the way you've described it to me, it's not quite like the that you don't enjoy any of his stuff, but you enjoy certain stuff more than others.
Yeah, like within this trilogy, it hasn't been my favorite sound. It's very mellow compared to some of his older stuff, like you were saying, like a little bit more trap and electronic. I enjoyed that from him. And I'm not gonna say like I listened to a good amount of his discography or nothing like that, but there's his biggest songs I tend to enjoy those. I think he's a phenomenal vocalist. The production is solid for the most part. It's just so I listened to After Hours all the way through last night. It's not my style per se, but like I enjoyed it. But then you like I've talked to you about Don or yeah, right?
Yeah, Dawn
Don
FM.
FM. Couldn't stand the album.
Crazy.
Oh, and I'll stick with that. For the same reasons that I just it's not my style of music. Like it's no disrespect to him. I still think he's great in all of his avenues. Just for my listening, like it's just I don't
It's
find a
not
time where
what you go
I
to.
can hear any of that. So
Hey, to each their own. I
right.
mean, you're wrong, but to each their own. Um, but we've talked a lot about his production style, and obviously these last two, a lot of stuff that Asher you mentioned with Mike Dean, bringing back a lot of this synthy '80s pop kind of style. Really, I mean, there's been a few artists doing that where it's kind of been getting more and more popular the last, 5-10 years. But he's for sure one of the ones that's brought it to the forefront of being like something that most people are listening to again, or at least the mainstream is listening to again pretty heavily. Obviously, with songs like "Blinding Lights," "Save Your Tears," and all of those breaking all kinds of streaming records and all that good stuff. But leading up to this album, there's been a pretty consistent um, sound progression. I want to say with the production style of these last two albums in that regard. And as we were getting ready for this, I think the first song kind of that came up from him recently as a single didn't even actually make the cut of the album, but it was Dancing in the Flames, and a track that wasn't my favorite, but one that, I still vibe with a bit. And it was for sure like that heavy '80s style again, top to bottom in that production style. But then we got a track like Timeless, followed by Sao Paulo, which were a little bit different. They still had some of that synthy '80s pop style to it, but I was really curious to hear what direction he was going to go after he brought back some of those more trap and electronic elements and various styles that he did earlier in his career as well, and kind of blending that. And when it came to this album, I will say I was personally very impressed with the production style on it, how he was able to incorporate that similar and familiar sound from those previous two albums, still continuing on with some of that '80s synth style stuff, but also infusing it with a bit more of the traditional hip hop sounds, a little more grimy electronic kind of distorted stuff as well. And it really showcased the things that made me enjoy each evolution of his sound in his career really well, whether that was like on After Hours and Dawn, or even earlier on Starboy, Beauty Behind the Madness, and those kinds of albums. One thing I will say that for me, the production, the reason it's not like a perfect score in my eyes is over the hour and a half runtime that we get on this album. There are a few moments where that, particularly the synth stuff that he brings in, does start to feel a little bit repetitive at times in terms of their cadence and their style. I did catch myself at a couple times being like, okay, cool, we're just going right back to the Blinding Lights intro. Like it's a lot of that kind of infusion at different places. So I ended up giving the production a 9. I did really like it a lot, but not quite perfect. Asher, how did you feel about this section?
Well, I mean, kind of just to piggyback off of what you were talking about, in terms of the sound being from every album, but like specifically more teetering on the end of the After Hours slash Don FM slash Starboy, where it's synths, but bringing like elements of hip hop and things like that. This
Mhm.
is full circle, right? He's
Yeah,
publicly said multiple times, like this is it. Like I'm hanging it up after this. Even on the outro song, which I absolutely loved, "Hurry Up Tomorrow,"
yeah,
like it transitions, right? Like if you put on the crossfades on whatever your choice of streaming app, like it transitions perfectly into the intro of "High for This" off of House of Balloons, which is the first track he ever put out on streaming. So
yeah,
like this, like he's hanging it up, right? And now obviously as this is like a bigger project that we're digesting, right? 22 tracks, hour and 24 minutes, I think it was something
yeah,
like that. It can get to a point where certain tracks are sounding more similar to others, and it's becoming less of like, oh, these are cool transitions into the next song, and more so like, okay, this is meshing to a point where I can't really decipher the two.
yeah.
I do think that, I mean, those are like few and far between moments for me.
Agreed. Yeah,
There are like, like a couple times where I'm like, like it's, did it switch yet? Did it not? But for the most part, I think they did a really, really good job. I love this Mike Dean and Abel, just kind of like producing duo. I think they do a fantastic job. And I feel like they did throw in enough kind of curveballs or mix-ups that it's not all the same thing.
Sure.
I kind of was joking with my younger brother. He like sent me like a meme or something where it was like Sao Paulo as a single, and it's like boring, like it's just like all these people
Yeah.
with like a straight face, and it's like Sao Paulo on the album, and everyone's like freaking out. And it's funny because like when that track first dropped, I wasn't really impressed, but
Yeah.
like when it transitions to it on the album, like I actually was like, wow, no, this is sick. Like this is a cool, like
Yeah.
kind of like straying from what we started with, if that kind of makes sense. And then
Hmm.
you mentioned things like the Playboy Cardi collab. I mean, features. We got another Future track, which is always a good thing. I love this duo. We've got like a handful of features on this thing, and with The Weeknd, especially as of late in this trilogy, those are few and far between. He doesn't have a lot of those.
Yeah.
And with the different production elements that kind of like aid to the strengths of those features and those artists, I don't know. I'm just overall really impressed that he can kind of like keep attention throughout an hour and a half. Like, there's like this
Yeah.
little moment where it's like, I'm kind of teetering, but for the most part, like I enjoyed basically the whole thing very thoroughly. So if I were to grade the production, um, I'd probably say somewhere around a 9 or a 9.5 personally.
Yeah, and J Mac, to push this over to you, with you not loving the sound of Dawn FM and a little bit after hours, how are you feeling about this one that incorporates some of those elements but also goes its own way?
So I think one of my biggest problem, Asher, you said it, is there are times where it sounds very similar, and the only difference is for me, I feel like there are way too many of those moments where I'm not hearing much difference until like maybe 3/4 of the way into the song, and then something finally switches up and it's like, okay, like that's a cool implication. But for the most part, like I'm just sitting here thinking like, how much can one do in an hour and a half with synths, really? Like that throughout the entire album, that's all I'm like really thinking. Granted, I'm not saying it's like bad, like you're really good at using synths, like cool, do your thing. But then, like I said, I just get lost in where I'm at within the album, but like not in a way that I'm like I'm in it and I'm like super stoked about it. Like I'm just kind of like, where the heck are we? Like, are we still on this song? Are we 2 tracks like since I've been listening? Like, so I gave production a 6. There were a couple tracks like Timeless. There was another one pretty early on. I don't remember the name of it, but there were a couple songs where the instrumentals were definitely different and very unique to its own, and so that was kind of like a saving grace, but it just felt way too similar for me.
That's interesting. I thought for sure you would like this one a lot more than the previous couple. So that's I mean, hey, it's not for you. But to swing this right back over to you, something you mentioned earlier, I believe, and Asher brought it up just barely. Um, what I feel like a lot of us really come to the weekend for, in terms of if you were to pinpoint one thing that he does better or as good as anybody else, is the vocal capability that he has.
Mhm.
How'd you feel about the vocal portion of this album as opposed to the production here?
So definitely better. I think it carries throughout much better than, in my opinion, the production. I think there are a couple songs where there's moments where I'm like iffy about like the way he went about a certain vocal chain or like a chorus and things like that. But for the most part, I mean, it, like you said, it's the weekend. Like we go to the weekend for his vocals, and so throughout it, I was pretty hyped on the vocals. I would need to listen to it again fully to really digest it because it is a long album.
Sure.
So I'm sitting at that like 7-8 range. Like
Wow. That's,
So,
I mean, even that feels like lower than I was expecting
oh
you would go with the
yeah.
vocals. But Asher, do you have more to elaborate on as far as the vocal performance on this project?
I mean, it's like kind of just being like a broken record here. It's just like it's his main strong suit.
Sure.
There's always people who make the claim it's like, oh, it's so much better to see so and so live than it is in the studio version or like the recorded version or whatever. But from personal experience, like it truly is like it's unbelievable
Wow.
because like he'll make it known that there's like never a chance in hell that he would ever like lip sync or backdrop anything. He's singing it and
Yeah.
he's changing it and he's going on vocal runs that like he doesn't do in the original one, and it's still like just as good if not better, and it's like really impressive to witness. And I'm pretty excited. I'm registered for the pre-sale to go to the Vegas show on July 5th,
Oh,
so I'm
dope.
pretty hyped about the
Nice.
tour. It's going to be with Mike Dean opening and Playboy Cardi, which is pretty insane.
That is crazy.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, what can we say that hasn't already been said except give like specific examples?
Sure.
The transition between Niagara Falls and Take Me Back to LA,
Yeah.
and those two songs, like, not including the transition, it blows me away every time. Like his ability to, like, you feel like the song is winding down, and then he just like closes it out with just like this incredible, like, and obviously props to like how they insert it in the song and the mixing along
Sure.
with the instrumental. But it's just like I'm never really not in awe about just like his vocal abilities. Call it glazing, whatever you want to do. I'm gonna give vocal a 10. I just like
Yeah.
he doesn't mess up when it comes to that. That's his bread and butter.
Yeah, I'll pick up right where you left off there. I also gave this section a 10. When I'm like going to an album, um, and especially going for this year from this album, this is kind of like my standard for what a 10 out of 10 is. Not only does it showcase a lot of range, like he's doing a lot of notes in terms of what he's able to hit, in both high and low and all that good stuff. But he also approaches um, the flows and the deliveries with an original angle where it doesn't just feel like we're getting another Starboy or another Blinding Lights performance. Despite the fact that he does fantastic on all of those great tracks that we're all familiar with from him, he goes in a lot of different directions on this one. He brings a lot of originality to each song. The vocal effects at various times I also really liked when looking at that. And to give another specific example, just to the whole crew that put this album together, but not just his. If you look at Travis Scott's feature later on the album, at first I was like, okay, this is Travis Scott sounding, because we don't read the features on there on the track list. But then I was like, this is a little different. Where are we going with this? I actually really liked where they went with that as well, that they did the auto tune and the delivery just a little bit differently. It just gives a lot of those songs a refreshing and unique feel where it does feel like it's its own thing to me, and it doesn't feel like we're piggybacking, off of Dawn FM or House of Balloons or Starboy or Beauty Behind the Madness, despite the fact that you get flavors of all of those albums in these vocal performances, which I really liked. Um, but I say all that to say that, like, absolutely, as of right now, for me, when it comes to pop and vocal performances for this coming year, this is like absolutely what I'm going to be holding as the measuring stick of, like, okay, how does this measure up to this vocal performance if I'm going to like put one above the other in terms of their abilities. So I really liked it. And to move a little bit more into the content direction of the album and talking more about the lyrical performance, um, the Weeknd's been a unique guy for me to listen to throughout his career because the way he words things and the way he writes things is cool and unique, but at the same time, it's kind of like most of the time it's all stuff that you're like, hey, this is well written, but don't take this advice. Like, this is not good stuff to be implementing in your life, but it's cool the way he approaches
Especially
it.
the earlier stuff. The
Oh
earlier
yeah,
stuff
100%.
especially, yeah.
Right. So with this one, I mean, looking forward to it. I was curious to hear where he would go, particularly coming off of Don FM, where it is a little bit more optimistic and it is a little bit more like, hey, I want to, do things a little bit differently, or I want to look at life in a new lens. I was curious where he would go with this, and at least in my eyes, he didn't fail to disappoint me on that front. There's a lot of interesting stuff, and the quality of writing is pretty good in my eyes compared to his previous works. Not to say that like the past was total trash, or to say that this one's perfection or anything like that, but um, it definitely has its more poetic moments where you, if you're really listening and you pay attention to what he's writing and saying, that it's worded in a way that I think is pretty cool and unique with the way he's implementing different metaphors and things like that. But it's for sure not without its cheesier moments also at times, and you're just going to get some of that naturally on an album of this length. And again, like to I don't think he's a perfect writer when it comes to songwriting, and so it's not unfamiliar for me to have those moments where I'm like, all right, that was a little corny at various times, but in general, I was pretty pleased with it. I did give the lyrical content here an 8 because I was pretty impressed with it. So, Asher, how are you feeling about this one?
I think that's a fair claim to make, especially like we're talking about again, just this is a long project, right? This is a lot of media, this is a lot of content that we're putting out there. But I think what makes the weekend really special, especially with these last couple projects, is the honesty within it all. And I think it's like really, really cool to hear him, sing a song like off of oh my gosh, why am I tripping? My Dear Melancholy, right? You
Yeah.
hear a track like Call Out My Name, or you hear a song like, Save Your Tears or In Your Eyes from After Hours, and the
Hmm.
context comes out later, and it's not something that he's just like, hey, what would make like a cool like pop song that's like, like a romantic drama. It's like, no, this is like, him and Bella Hadid, this is him and Selena Gomez, this is him and whoever. And in these last couple of projects, kind of like you were mentioning, how it's like less about like, here's the partying, here's the drugs, here's the I'm gonna go do whatever because I'm a young whatever. It's more like I am kind of in this philosophical place where I am finding out what's more important, and things are, I'm realizing that things in time are finite, and where am I going to go, what I'm going to do, like what kind of void am I filling. To give like a specific example, in this album, you got songs like Hurry Up Tomorrow, the outro that I talked about.
Yeah.
He's literally saying things like, am I ready to do this? Like, I've been filling a void for so long. What is this going to mean when it's over? Yada yada yada. You
Yeah.
have the future feature, and when you get like melancholy future, I always personally think it's going to be a banger. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
He's talking about like, I need to settle down. I don't want to give space to people. I want to, find a place where like I'm happy with someone I care about, whatever.
Yeah.
um when you have a project that's rounding out such a robust career with a very lengthy yet impressive catalog, you kind of like, in a way, you need the lyrics and the story to deliver. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you
Yeah.
need to have your like finishing like magnum opus, like, okay, this is the end. Like, you need to have it be like you need to have people feel that. And does it get, like you said, a little corny, cheesy, or even like repetitive? I feel like personally,
Sure.
when you kind of go through and there are, some of the songs they're talking about like the same thing. It's like, okay, we get that you are, kind of in a spot where you're sad because this relationship didn't go anywhere, or you feel like, you don't quite understand what you want. And when you have 22 tracks, that's bound to happen. But I feel like overall the story that was told and the message, like, like character arc or progression from House of Balloons all the way through the end till Hurry Up
Yeah.
Tomorrow, it's very different. And it comes full circle in kind of a beautiful way, where it is so like it is such a big contrast. So I feel like lyrically, somewhere in the realm of like a 7 or an 8 is like appropriate for something like that.
For sure, yeah, and to kind of echo what you're saying about how a lot of these lyrical moments have a lot more meaning than the face value as you start looking into them. That actually was something I meant to bring up with the vocals, but um, particularly there's quite a few moments on the album where he references, Asher, you probably know better than I do, but a show where he went out to sing and basically like his voice kind of failed him as he went out to sing, which he referred to at least in the interview for Apple Music for this as like a anxiety attack prior to one of his shows. It was wild to me, one, to hear the honesty and to just hear him come out and talk so openly about all the uncertainty of all that kind of stuff, but then also to deliver such a strong vocal performance with so much vocal range where it's like vocally you got your work cut out for you if you go to perform this album. So
Right.
I did appreciate a lot of that honesty as
It
well.
it's kind of, so obviously it is crazy that, like, I mean, he even included the skit, right? Like, I can't effing
Yeah,
sing. Like, he,
yeah,
he does like the whole thing where he's like, I don't think you understand, like I can't. And watching that like in real time when the video came out and whatever, so first of all, it's more like it shows like kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of this, where it's like he would never in a million years at a live show try to like cheat
yeah,
anyone who paid their money to come see him, right? Like it would
yeah,
never be a situation where he's like, hey, I'm gonna half-ass this, or hey, we're gonna have like back playing and I'm just kind of like gonna go with it, like when it works and when it doesn't. Like, you see the video as people are shooting. It was a back-to-back show in Los Angeles, and it was the second night of the back-to-back, and he comes out after doing the intro track, and like you can tell that something's wrong after the first intro track, and he comes out and he does like this huge, like extremely emotional apology to the crowd where he's like borderline in tears, and he's like, this kills me to like cancel this show. You guys came out here. I love you all so much. You are like the most amazing fans in the world, and the fact that like I can't sing for you right now is killing me. Like, to shut down the show, and I'm so sorry, and we will reschedule the show, and we will get it all sorted out. But blah blah blah. Like, he's not really one to hide behind antics or be like, oh, like, let me kind of like improvise and make this work somehow. Like, he is. He's very straight up and honest, and it's something I feel like respectable, especially in the industry today, where
sure,
you do have a lot of artists that perform with like their instrumentals or their songs playing in the back, and they're kind of more about just like getting the energy rather than giving a true performance. Not to say that that's the wrong avenue all the time. I enjoy plenty of artists who are more that style.
sure,
But when you're a vocalist of his caliber, and the important thing about your music is the performance and the message you're giving and you singing, I just find it like really respectable when, like, in difficult moments like that, it's like you're still as honest as you can be, and you
yeah,
make it work to the best of your ability, but you don't cheat anyone, if that makes sense.
yeah, for sure. J Mac, I know you're. This is an area where you're pretty strict on people's performances. How'd you feel lyrically for him here?
So, like we brought up, it's a longer album. We can expect some repetitive nature when it comes to lyrics, some corny moments. Like, it's not uncommon for that. But when it does come to things like a repetitive nature, especially like lyrically, I feel like you can cut back on some of those songs or make other songs a little bit longer. Like, I don't think we need all these different songs kind of explaining the same thing, get into the same result. But then again, there's a lot of artists that do it, so I'm not just like knocking him for that. Um, there were a couple songs where I wasn't for the lyrics. Like, one of the ones that, like, off the top of my head I can think of, and I don't know how many people like this song, so I don't know if I'm gonna get like a lot of hate for it, but I don't really care. But like, the beginning of "Baptized in Fear" I thought was so lame. Like, I thought, like, oh, I'm in a bathtub and this is now paralysis. The only movement I have is in my toe. Lame. I don't care. It's lame. I don't care for it.
J-Mac doesn't care about medical conditions.
I I just I maybe I don't understand like a lot of the things that are being said just because like the weekend's not really like my guy. Like I appreciate him. I enjoy some of his music and I can respect and get behind it, but like not enough to where like I am not on the same page as you guys, right?
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I wasn't super impressed with a lot of the lyrics, but then other times I could see like the poetry behind it and like the beauty behind some of his words and that's like when I did start to actually appreciate the lyrics on this album. But I ended up giving it a 6 just because like I said, the repetitive nature, and then there's just some songs where I was just like, no, no, dude,
You didn't love it.
no, not
Um,
really.
well, to kind of continue on with a little bit of this discussion into similar territory, to talk a little bit about the theme and the concept here. The first two albums in this trilogy were more or less clear cut, with After Hours kind of starting to talk about essentially like all the things that you can find in life after hours, late at night, whether that's drugs, partying, the highs and lows, friendship, ups and downs, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, feeling like it comes to a little bit of a resolution where it's the highs always kind of come crashing down kind of territory. And then obviously, I felt like the music video rollout for that also kind of led us to that feeling of like ultimately, quote unquote, a character death at that point where he kind of needs to feel like he's being reborn, which is really where Dawn FM picks up and continues on, transitioning to the afterlife or a new day. Obviously, a much more fleshed out concept album, if you want to if you want to call it that. And then taking us a little bit more into optimistic territory, and now here with "Hurry Up Tomorrow," which feels a little bit like a cathartic moment for him, or for this character that's been building up for the past three albums. And Asher, kind of as you alluded to, even throughout his career, it feels a little bit like it's leading up to this point here. Um, there's a lot of introspection, reflection on the past, uncertainty, but also thoughtfulness towards the future. Um, Talk to us a little bit how you felt about how this album theme played out.
So I feel like what's interesting, and I think I've mentioned this before in previous episodes that we've done before. I love when there is a story being told or a character being played, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like he is one of the better artists who does that on a consistent level that I've seen. In After Hours, you got the iconic red suit jacket. He goes
Yeah.
through countless different music videos. There's moments where he gets the plastic surgery to symbolize, kind of what the industry does and how you
Sure.
like have these moments where you're trying to like stay in this place that you're no longer at, and you kind of like spiral out into like this
Yeah.
manic episode where things don't make sense. Don FM, he's like this old again. He's like he's rebirthed, right? He's got Jim Carrey narrating the project, which I love that, by the way. My biggest like what makes me so sad is that there was no like hip hop or pop artist or whatever that got James Earl Jones to narrate an album. I wanted that so badly after we got Morgan Freeman and Jim Carrey. We didn't get James Earl Jones, and I'm pissed off, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and that album, like you said, it's very ethereal, right? The whole theme is
Yeah.
like, hey, like your time is running out, like the light is approaching you, like get to where you want to be. What does this mean to you?
Yeah.
And then Hurry Up Tomorrow. It's funny because I feel like there's less like there's less of a character and
Sure.
almost less of a theme than the first two. And is it like mildly disappointing? Sure.
Yeah.
The theme very clearly is wrapping up the story, right? It's like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
coming to grips with what it's going to be, and like I mentioned before, it's more real than anything. It's more
Yeah.
honest. So theme being, you know, melancholy, bittersweet endings. I feel like he did a good job. The theme itself didn't hit as strongly for me as the first two
Agreed.
because of
Yeah.
how clear cut the story, the build up, the character was. So out of the categories that we are going over, this was like on the lower end for me.
Yeah.
I'd probably give that one like a 6.5 or a 7, just because again, he delivered what he wanted to, but it wasn't as like powerful as the first two projects we got in the trilogy, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Agreed. J Mac, how about for you?
I'm glad we're getting, I'm getting somewhat closer to you guys. Like I do enjoy the concept of this whole wrap up situation for him. I like I thought certain aspects of like Don FM were cool. Like I do enjoy that Jim Carrey was somebody who he got on the project to help
Yeah.
out with this narration and this, like Asher was saying, this character in After Hours of him being in the iconic red suit and like this is Hollywood and whatever it may be. Um I do I love a great like cut and dry story, like beginning to end, like here we are, like this is the final stretch. Uh the only thing that knocks it for me, because I'm not a huge fan on the other two projects, but the only thing that knocked it for me is it's another album that we get from another artist who's being very vulnerable, very open. It's a little different, and for that, it has its saving graces because I think he does this album in a more unique, personal way than other artists that like we've reviewed.
Yeah.
Like even just looking from like Kane Brown to this, like so very different on
Yeah.
being like
100%.
vulnerable and like open and
Yeah.
here's where I finally am and this is where I'm going and things of that
Yeah.
nature. Um, be, it's like it's a 7. It's like a cool 7.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what both of you guys said. I do feel like with this one, there was it obviously was less of a clear-cut story or theme than the previous two, which to me was a little bit unfortunate, not because I felt like it was a bad album, but without it, but I felt like it made for such a good album to have that with, to have kind of more of a story developing through this album. I felt like could have tied in and played in to that idea really well. I will also say for an album that um, is a little bit more about coming to an ending, it does feel at times like it's a little bit muddled down, not with maybe uncertainty or with previous themes that he's already explored, in that they don't work and aren't where he wants to be. And I do get that that's part of it, in feeling like you're a little bit stuck in the past and not fully wanting to let go of everything, or you might still have your vices despite going through changes and things like that. Um, but it does leave me a little bit, I guess, with a similar feeling to the way Dawn FM left off, where it's like it leaves me wishing for a little bit more complete resolution, which is where I thought Dawn FM was going to lead this album. That's not to say it's bad or anything like that, but just a couple of like nitpicks that I had about it. I also gave it a 7, in talking about the theme. But to move into a little bit more different territory here, to talk about some of the features that appear on the album. Obviously, we've talked about Future and Playboy Cardi, Travis Scott, Lana Del Rey also has a performance. Florence and the Machine, I believe I saw in the credits. Mike Dean, obviously in a lot of the production areas here. Um, for me, I thought this was interesting because it rounded out and brought back a lot of features that I felt like were not necessarily standard throughout his career, but features that he works really well with and that he's done a lot of great stuff with. Those that do appear in my view perform pretty well. I really liked almost everybody that showed up and made performances. But throughout the runtime, for how long it is, despite it not feeling theme wise like an album that needs a whole lot of presence, the features that were there did well enough on the tracks that they were on that it made me feel like there was additional room that could have been filled by some cooler, unique features. Whether it's other artists to help round out his career, I know Daft Punk doesn't really do a whole lot, but something with them could have been cool. Um, or just other artists that he hasn't worked with a whole lot, but has a lot of familiar territory with. I ultimately gave the features a 7 because I did feel like the solo songs were great. I felt like the collab songs were great, but I did feel like there was a little bit more room for some additional feature performance. But Asher, how did you feel here on this one?
I feel like saying that there could have been more is like it makes sense for sure. And I feel like there are oftentimes a lot of, albums that you're come across where it's like, oh, like it would have sounded so cool to have this person here.
Yeah,
Or,
for
oh,
sure.
on their last album, they had such a good collab with this person. I was hoping for another one.
Yeah,
I feel like the idea here, kind of like backpedal a little bit to what I was talking about earlier. For the weekend, especially in this final trilogy, features are so few and far between. Right,
yeah,
After Hours has none.
yeah,
Dawn FM has Tyler the Creator and Lil Wayne,
yeah,
and then in this one he has what is that? 4, 5? Lana Del Rey, Travis
yeah,
Scott, Future, Playboy Cardi. Yeah, somewhere in there, 4 or 5 features. And I feel like what it really was, if you kind of look at the fine print, is paying homage to older projects and kind of like collabs that like fans who have been here for a long time would appreciate,
yeah,
right?
one
I,
hundred
I
percent.
mentioned the Future collab. You have songs like Low Life, All I Know.
Yeah,
I'm not going to mention 6 Feet Under because I don't really like that track, but you have these Future and Weekend collab songs that did really, really well when they came out, and everyone was really impressed by the chemistry they had. And it's kind of interesting because it's like this two-sided toxicity where the weekend is like, this like seductive vocalist who's like very much, like a pretty boy who does like whatever, but he's still like, toxic in the sense of like how many, like he talks about, like how many girls and whatever he used to get with, right?
yeah,
And then Future's like a lot more abrasive and like, that stereotypical like trap artist who's like the superstar, rock star, goes around the world, whatever, whatever. And seeing them come together on their final track where it's more melancholy, right? And
yeah,
they're talking about like not necessarily regrets, but where they are currently. That was really interesting to me. Lana Del Rey, right?
yeah,
Stargirl interlude was a favorite of many. Like a lot of people say that that's like the best track on Starboy. And
yeah,
when they've actually spoken to Lana Del Rey about their relationship, she's like, it's always fun to work with him. I have so much respect for him. We kind of joke that I am the female that is talked about in his music, and he is the male that's talked about in mine. Travis Scott has a weekend feature on every single album in his catalog. You can go
yeah,
all the way back to the very beginning. He has one on Rodeo, Birds in the Trap, Astroworld, Utopia, like all of them, right?
yeah,
And I think he carefully chose these pieces to be like, here were these monumental moments in my career that I shared with these specific people. And here is something that I feel like, again, the fans who've been here for a long time can see like the growth with these features and appreciate it the most,
yeah,
while also still making it my project and doing the thing that I do where I can deliver a solo performance that still blows everyone away.
yeah.
I personally will probably go with an eighth just for the nostalgia factor of all the different features and
Mhm.
being that I didn't really not like any of them. I thought all the
Yeah,
features did their job really well.
So I'm kind of with Ryder on this one. I think all of the features killed their part. Like kind of crazy, at first
yeah.
Playboy Cardi, now Future. Like
Giving respect to Future and Playboy Cardi, this is a big day
right. This is
for J
huge.
Mac
This is
here.
Big
massive.
moment. Big moment in history.
Yeah. Everybody kills their respective role, and I think each song that had each one of these features, like I didn't uh not like any of those songs. those were actually some of the points that like brought me back into the album, just because like I was saying before, like to me there was a lot of similarities within the production, so these features here and there, kind of like brought me right back, and I was vibing. um the only problem I have with it is because of how long it is, and because me personally, I feel like there's so many similarities between songs. Maybe like one or two more features would have been cool to like round out the fullness of that aspect. So I ended up giving it a 6. It could be a 7. It's a very soft 6, but yeah, I just think with how long of an album it is, not even taking away from what The Weeknd did, because I think, vocally he killed it. Like there are songs lyrically where I think he was really good. Um, it's just those couple round out, make an album more full, just as a personal taste.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Like I said, I agree with a lot of that that you said there. And to move into kind of our last section here to talk about the overall enjoyment of the album and the replay value and all that good stuff. I feel like we'll get some diverse numbers here from each of us. For me, I there's a lot of great stuff on this album, a lot of things that I will come back to as an album listening experience. I found myself really enjoying it each of the times that I listened through it to prepare for this. It does feel like there's a lot of content that I will come back to and that I'll enjoy pretty frequently. Even to come back to it occasionally as an album as itself to listen to it. What I will say, J Max talked a lot about it up till now, but one thing that I'll echo in this category is there is just a lot of content on this album. And when you put out that much content, I don't inherently have a problem with having, 22, 23 tracks, whatever there was, hour and a half runtime. But it does make it more challenging to have each of those tracks stand out as a track that I'll want to come back to in the future. Whereas on a project that's 10 to 14 tracks, it's really easy to have each of those individual tracks feel special and unique in their own way, where you'll come back to each of those. So overall, the replay value for me was an 8. Like I said, I did enjoy a lot of it. We'll come back to a lot of it, but there are a handful of tracks or runtime where it was just a bit too long for me to want to re-listen to on a frequent basis. But Asher, how'd you feel here?
I mean, like it's really the same thing that we've been saying, right? It's a long album.
Yeah.
For instance, like, I think about when I first got to college and me and Ryder were doing the RA gig, right? And Donda finally drops, and we're
Yeah.
like, Donda's out, let's go. It's like 40 songs in 3 hours. It's
Yeah.
just it's a very bloated project. Not to
Sure.
say that like there weren't an abundance of great songs on that album.
Yeah.
Shout out Life of the Party featuring Andre 3000, but
Yeah.
like, it's hard to listen to it in one sitting, right?
Sure.
And it's like the same thing with this album. There are countless songs that I enjoy quite a bit.
Yeah.
Big Sleep, Sao Paulo, Hurry Up Tomorrow, Take Me Back to LA, Niagara Falls, just to name a few. And there's like
Yeah.
countless others that I really, really like. And, do I see myself, excuse me, adding these into daily playlists, going back and listening to them individually? 100%.
Yeah.
But taking an hour and a half out of your day regularly to go back and listen to this project all in order, it's a lot, right? So replay value, track wise, song wise, it's great, it's phenomenal, and for that reason I would give the replay value like a 7 or an 8. As an entire like full-fledged, like, okay, like go through each thing like all the way through, finish it start finish, it's like, okay, that's, it's a bigger task, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, probably like a 7 or 8, I'd say.
Fair enough. J Mac, how about for you? Hit us with it.
okay, so there's two things you look at with
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
category, right?
Yeah.
It's
Before we wrap up your statement here, I got to reiterate though that one of these songs on this album made your top 10 of the year last year. So there is some replay value.
correct.
Okay.
So two category, or there's two two areas into this category.
Yeah.
There's just enjoying the project that an artist puts out. Like, can you just appreciate it, respect it, have a good time listening through it? Like, first time, second time, however many times, whatever. The other part is how often are you gonna listen to these songs? So it's a cool 3 out of 10.
Oof.
I only like. Yes, I enjoyed some of these songs.
Yeah.
But like, it's just like, it simply comes down to this isn't really my style. Do I hate The Weeknd? No, I'll still come back and listen to his music. The only song that I can sit down, there's two, is the intro to the to the album. I thought was a really good opener. But then Timeless is some of the most fun I've had with the song just in general, and that's where the 3 comes from.
Okay.
The 3
Those
is
two.
Timeless and that first track.
There you go.
It could go to a 4 just because like I could probably say I did enjoy like a cool half of the project, so like a 4 isn't out of the picture, but it was very low for me because I'm probably not going to come back to this album, if at all.
Fair
besides those 2
Fair
songs.
enough. Yeah,
That's fine.
And to Asher, I forgot to mention this to you when we were prepping for this episode, but we like to wrap up with talking about a few specific tracks to talk about what we felt like was our favorite, our least favorite, and a track that may be feeling a little bit underrated at the moment in general. For me, it's hard to go away from. I don't know why I have this problem with The Weeknd because I really like a lot of his deeper cuts, but I always do feel like some of his more popular stuff is the stuff that really resonates with me. I don't know why that tends to be the case. I feel like After Hours might be the exception with how big Blinding Lights is. I do feel like there are a few other tracks that are a little bit better than that one. But it's hard to move away from a track like Timeless that is so unique and sticks out on this album. Cry For Me was also really, really cool with its grimy, gritty production and the vocal performance there. It is his most trending song on Apple Music right now, so like I feel like a little bit of a fanboy saying that, but it's a great track. But to throw a third one in there just to break up that monotony a little bit, I don't know how much it breaks up the popularity contest because Enjoy the Show with Future is pretty good. I did enjoy that one as well. My least favorite track is kind of a two-edged sword here. It's Reflections Laughing, and it's simply because the interlude that intercuts the song makes it ruin the song's replay value a little bit for me because of how much I loved his performance on the first half and Travis Scott's performance at the conclusion. It feels like the little skit interlude in there like is going to deter me from listening to what I felt like was one of my favorite general songs on the album. So I say that to say I really like the song, but I really didn't love that the interlude was stuck right in the middle as opposed to having its own section or being at the end or a beginning of a song where I could, if I didn't want to listen to it, I could skip through it. Most underrated for me, Asher, you brought this song up, but the closer, Hurry Up Tomorrow, I really, really loved. It was a different direction sound-wise. I really did feel like it wrapped up things really well as far as the album, as far as the trilogy, and if this is the end all be all of his career, if it is that, I felt like it did that really well. Also, ultimately for me, the album scored out to an 8.2 out of 10. Honestly, it may be a little bit higher than that in my mind. We'll see how it ages. Maybe up to the 8.5 or 9 range even. But J Mac, did you pick out a few tracks for us?
Yeah, I couldn't come out with an underrated one just
Because you didn't like it. You didn't like any of it.
Well,
You can say the opener. That's fine. We'll count that.
that kind of okay, because I could put it as the best, but Timeless to me is where I
Yeah,
put as
sure.
the best. But what is that one called? Wake Me Up.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep forgetting that, but yeah, let's throw it on that list as
Okay.
the underrated, even though it's not just because it's the opener.
Yeah.
For me, the worst one, and it just because to me it felt so random and like abrupt, so I didn't hear any of the singles coming into the album except for Timeless. So Sao
Paulo.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
It just felt very obscure and just like
Yeah.
right in there, very early on, and so like it just kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
Wasn't huge on it.
Maybe it'll age on you well because Asher brought up that as a single it was kind of like a lot of people weren't so hot on
Right.
it. I definitely wasn't very hot on it when it came out, but
Yeah.
then in the album listening experience, like Asher said, I was like, okay, this is kind of nuts. This is kind of
I
sick.
will say
So
the positive side to that is the production's super cool, very
Yeah.
different. Like
Mhm.
that I can get behind. Maybe it will come back and
sure,
get
maybe.
its way
We'll
out of
see.
the worst and help the replay value. But for right now, it was just very threw me for a loop. So
There you go.
yeah.
What is score out to out of 10 for you?
5.8 out of 10.
All right.
Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah.
Asher, bring us back up here. Give us a little bit of a higher score to end this thing off with.
So, in terms of individual tracks, like I said, big project, digesting a lot. I think if I were to, pick a handful that I really enjoyed, Take Me Back to LA was brilliant. Niagara Falls was actually one of the ones that stuck out to me originally, especially the back half of it,
Yeah.
like the instrumental switch that transitioned into Take Me Back to LA.
Yeah.
I think, ironically enough, in terms of like underrated tracks that I feel like might go overlooked when they shouldn't be, I think both of your guys' picks are actually super brilliant. I thought the intro starts off really strong, and honestly, we see that from him a lot. Alone Again and like Dawn FM, the song, like
Yeah.
he killed it with both of those. And Hurry Up Tomorrow, like I said, the honesty and just like ending off the project with that was really, really brilliant. I think if I were to say like bottom, it's not even like it's a horrible song or anything. I feel like Reflections Laughing and also Opening Night are just like very forgettable. Like there's the song Open Hearts, like right after where he talks about, like how hard it is to love again, and it's a very infectious hook and a really like I don't know, the instrumental is really, really upbeat and infectious, and I like it
Yeah.
quite a bit. Let me pull out my calculator here and actually do some math.
Yeah, we can't end
And
off with a 5.8, so we've got to hear
plus
a better
eight,
number before we end up this episode on.
6 plus 7 plus 8. Remind me, are there 6 categories or 5?
Yes, six categories.
There's 6. That's right. That's where there were 3 eights that I did. Or no, one of them was a 9. Sorry. All right. Yeah,
So much
my average was
suspense.
an
I
8.
know.
An 8 on the money. Yep.
There you go. So, and a very solid number. Much better in my eyes than the last score we heard from J Mac
At
here.
least there was an 8 in there. It might have been 0.8, but
Oh man. Any final thoughts on the project here before we wrap things up? Asher, is this going to be the last we hear from The Weeknd? Is there more in store?
Here's a couple bullet points here. Number one, let's hope to God he doesn't like continue his acting career. Let's hope he just like leaves that in the
Yeah,
past and
yeah,
does not put out
yeah,
the Idol season 2. We don't need that. Two, I personally feel like this is a really bittersweet yet like I feel like this is the play. I feel like this is what you do. I do not like I would be I feel like a little bit disappointed, like an eye roll level of disappointed if it was like, okay, now I'm gonna release more music just under the name Abel Tesfaye or something different. I'd be
yeah,
like, okay, that was lame. Like, why would we like go out with this like this bang and like this super awesome tour and like this big magnum opus just to be like, I tricked you. I'm not putting out any more music as The Weeknd, but I'm still putting out music. Like I
yeah,
I would be very disappointed. Um, the trilogy, very different from the initial trilogy, but
yeah,
in a very, very cool way.
yeah,
Ryder, I want to hear what you have to say about like just a question that I was thinking of.
yeah.
I feel like overall in this trilogy and also like his discography as a whole, I think my
Yeah.
favorite project of his is After Hours. If I'm
Hmm.
being completely honest, which
Yeah.
is like weird to think about because there's so many other projects that are just like I mean they're brilliant.
Right.
And at first in like 2020 I was worried that it was like a recency bias thing, but it just isn't. I feel like
Yeah.
it was such an enigma. He had taken such a long break from putting out music, and he just came back with this like raw power that we hadn't seen in so long, and told this brilliant story, and there was so much media and music videos that came with it and everything, and it was, I
Yeah.
don't know, I just like, I feel like it was as close to perfect as you can get. But you know, with this project, I can't say much else than, you know, I kudos to him, man. Kudos to having a consistent, enjoyable, remarkable, massive discography.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah. I definitely agree with you there. For me to choose a favorite, it's tough because for a guy that does like, kind of stays within himself in terms of his vocal range, there's so much diversity across his catalog when you really get down into the nitty-gritty of each project. And so like I do think like House of Balloons, which it is his first in that original trilogy, if I'm not mistaken.
yep.
Um, there's the originality factor of that for me, where I hadn't really heard anybody do something as like grimy and trappy as that while still sounding so angelic and soulful on the vocals. Um, there's that cool factor to it. I really, really, really like the storytelling of Dawn FM. I'm a big sucker for like a well executed storytelling and concept album with a few skits there. I think Jim Carrey's outro is one of my favorite skit, uh, you know, spoken word, whatever you want to call it, points on an album in recent memory. Um, and After Hours, like you said, the hit making power on that one, the storytelling as well there, the style and feel of the album itself is really great. But ultimately, I do still feel like my personal pick would be Starboy. It just combines a lot of elements of his music as well as just music styles in general that I personally dig and vibe with a lot. That is one of a handful of albums where I feel like any given day I could just throw that on top to bottom, shuffle or no shuffle, and just enjoy listening to it. Um, but this one, I will say it's going to take some time to see where it really sits. But for me, it at the present, it's sitting somewhere in the 3 to 4 range among his albums for me. So it's right up there. J Mac, would you be able to pick a favorite of the weekends? I know you haven't listened to everything top to bottom, but if you had to pick a favorite style or era.
Currently, I'm gonna stick with After Hours. Just because there are quite a few songs I can pull from that album that I do enjoy. I haven't heard too much from Starboy or what's the one right before that?
Beauty Behind the
Beauty
Mask.
That
Behind the
one.
Madness.
Yep, that one. There's a couple that I like from that album. So I'll get around to listening to some of those albums. I Yeah, I don't really have
Go
any.
back, go back to Kissland and listen to The Town, and oh my gosh, what's the other one that I'm forgetting right now? Hold on. Why can't I remember? Hold on, I'm going to Spotify. Hold on,
we
hold
got we
on,
got we got to get this.
hold
We
on.
need the info.
Because I will say, like, I don't know if what Asher you're
The
pulling up
Town
is
and Wanderlust.
Oh yeah,
the town and
Wanderlust. That's a good one.
Wanderlust.
Yeah.
So I
The
don't know if
Town and
that's
Wander.
the
The
same.
Town is tough, dude. When he puts in that like I don't even know what instrument that is, man. It gets me every time. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like comparable to stylistically like a Starboy, like the trapped electronic, like, or is that something
I
in its
I feel
own realm?
I feel like kind of. I feel like in a way,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would
Like
say compared to
Wanderlust
like yeah.
maybe. Wanderlust maybe is like, I don't know, man. Wanderlust isn't quite that, but no, the
It's
town.
it's
I
hard to
feel like the town
describe.
is
Yeah, it's almost like in its own avenue. I
cool.
correct me if I'm misremembering Asher, but I remember feeling a lot of the ways, not the exact same. There, it's obviously his own direction, but era wise, if I'm not mistaken, this came out pretty close to Take Care, the Drake album, and I feel like there's there's a few similar elements as far as like not saying that like they're stylistically the same album, but the incorporation of like mellower but with more hardcore upbeat kind of stuff as well.
Well, they were writing with each other, and they both had features on each other's albums at that point. So Drake
Right.
has a feature on "Live For" on Kissland, and then The Weeknd obviously has "Crew Love" on "Take Care."
Yeah.
And just the Canada boys running around. I don't know. Drake
Yeah.
definitely gave The Weeknd like a lot of he gave him big ups early in his career, and
Sure.
kind of like put a lot of people onto him, which is cool. But yeah, no, that's why I imagine they sound like similar. Is they're from the same place, they were writing it at the same time, they have features on each other's album. That was just kind of like
Yeah.
what was hitting at that point in time, like that
Yeah.
style.
Agreed. Cool.
Yeah, I'll go listen to some of his older stuff because, like I said, it sucks because I haven't had much great things to say when it comes to The Weeknd on the podcast, but
Yeah.
I don't hate him. I don't think he's terrible. I think he's a very respectable artist. I think he has one of the best vocal ranges we've heard in a very long time. You can put him up there with a great list of people. There's just some disagreements with my personal taste,
Yeah.
but I'm excited. It makes me interested in what he has.
One day it'll click. I got a feeling one day it's gonna click for him,
Well,
and we'll be back
Well,
when
I
that
mean,
happens.
today I did shout out Playboy and
There you go.
Future.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
never say
Well,
never.
Asher, thanks as always for joining us. We always appreciate having you on. It's always a good time, and hopefully we'll have some more great music this year, and see if we can get you on for another episode.
Yes, sir.
Dude, that new Travis seems to be on the way, man. I don't know if y'all tapped into 4x4. I liked it quite a bit, and it seems like
It's
he's
cool
moving
stuff.
quicker than he has in the past. So
Yeah,
we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, always a good
could be
time.
this year, could be 2028. We'll see.
Hopefully
Could be
this year.
2035.
Yeah,
All right.
with Playboy Cardi.
Hey, man. 2025 music. You heard it here first. No, I'm
All
playing.
right. We'll catch you later.
All right, bro. Peace.